we go! Here we go! Here we go!
We're gonna have a fiery Sterling today.
Well, no, you just have a big old air horn, and anytime a Packers fan tries to talk, you just hit the button and drown them out. Like, no, I can't hear you. Go Bears.
It's basically the la 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 la.
Yeah, exactly. Right? You don't even have to live there. You can do it from here. Just remote control everything. Yeah, I'm pissed off, man. Fuck the NFL at this point.
How's it going, everybody? Welcome to the OneIQ Football Talk podcast, and we are officially in the full swing of things with preseason right now. It is really feeling like football season again. Last week we had, Thursday where it was the Hall of Fame game, and it was like, oh, we have football on, but now we have more than just two teams. We had a few games on Thursday. We had a few games last night on Friday. We have a full slate of games here today. We have a couple of games tomorrow. It's football, baby. But as always, I'm Brendan. Joining me, as always, my good buddy Sterling. And, man, it's a good time.
Yeah, it's back. Yeah, we finally got football back. All that waiting, we went through the draft, all the free agency and the rumors, who's going where. And now we're here, getting to see what these guys look like on the field and seeing whether each of these teams is going to actually be able to be competitive this year.
Yeah, and, we went through the dead zone this year. In years past, we hadn't done that. And so for us, it was like we would be starting up around this time again and kind of going through a lot of, breaking down. But we weathered the storm this year and went through some of those dead zones and, we had a lot of good conversations, but now it's officially back. Like, we can talk like real football actually happening. Your Steelers played last night, and Steelers fans, again, right before we kind of went on, we were just chit-chatting about some of the stuff, and you were mentioning to me that you're kind of going, well, a lot of Steelers fans are kind of realizing what Justin Fields is.
He's coming as advertised at this point. He did not look great in the pocket yesterday. He was looking good during some of training camp, but again, that's with no pressure coming at you.
No live bullets.
Right, exactly. And so I think a lot of Steeler fans looked at that and went, oh, okay, now we understand why this organization wants to roll with Russell Wilson for now, because there are some very obvious lacking areas in Justin Fields' game that need to be improved upon. Like there was a reason that the Bears were so willing to move on to Caleb Williams. I mean, the fact that it was Caleb Williams made it a lot easier. I think if it was moving on to any of the other quarterbacks in this year's draft, there would have been more hesitation.
Without
Caleb Williams is a much greater step up. But yeah, I mean, he's coming as advertised. That's why they didn't sign him to a long-term contract yet. He's got to show that he can grow and improve before the Steelers are going to pay him.
Yeah, and earlier today, I got to watch Caleb Williams in his preseason debut, and again, man, 4 for 7, 90-something yards. Didn't get a TD, but you saw exactly what you wanted to see from him, going like, okay, you're going to have live bullets coming at you. It's not the Bears defense where they can't touch you. It's going to be these guys are coming out here trying to hit you. And it was, okay, I'm going to have pressure in my face, having a few magician, I'm not going to say Mahomes type plays, I'm just going to say magician type plays. And, it was one of those things where every single Chicago Bears fan just had the biggest smile on their face watching that game. The fact that they ended up winning like 33-6 or something like that, it just puts that cherry on the top of the cake. And it's a weird feeling for me to look at a Chicago Bears quarterback, and there was a play where he was rolling out of the pocket, he was rolling right, he fake pumped a pass to kind of slow the defender that was coming at him down, and then instead of just running like what we've seen the past couple of years, he delivered a laser beam to Cole Kmet for a massive gain. And it was one of those things where I was like, oh, he's going to run. Oh, no, he's throwing it. Oh, no. Oh, wait, that's a completion. And it was a good completion. It's a very weird experience, to say the least, as a Chicago Bears fan.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, you still got to, temper the expectations because this is still
Without a doubt.
preseason. You're not playing against all the number ones, things like that, and the Bears, by the sounds of it, are planning on trying to do right by Caleb Williams in the fact that they're not going to rush his development. Like it very much, I've seen Matt Eberflus talking and going, look, it's year 3. Year 3 is the big year for developing a rookie quarterback. That's when everything is set to come together. And so, I hope Bears fans don't have too high of expectations and don't just turn on him if there's 3 or 4 week stretch where he struggles or is making bad decisions. Like, I said a couple weeks ago when we were making some of our predictions that I would not be upset if Caleb Williams throws 20 plus interceptions as long as he learns from them. You were very quickly going, no, that would be bad. That would be bad. But like, we got to remember, Peyton Manning in his rookie year threw 28 interceptions. And it's still one of the best to play the game.
Yeah. Well, for me, the hesitation was that of going, if he's only throwing 25 touchdowns to 20 plus interceptions, I'm okay with, the high turnover rate if we're having, let's say 30 plus touchdowns. And it's basically that the biggest thing for me with the development side of things with Caleb Williams is I go, again, that conversation came out of Hard Knocks with the Bears are currently on. That came out on Tuesday. He's having that conversation with Nick Saban, which is an awesome conversation to have with a guy like that who just understands the game and how to develop players like he did at Alabama. And you just kind of look at it and go, for me, I'm fine if he isn't the perfect polished product until year 3. Sure. The one thing that I am hesitant with the Bears, and I don't want to see them do, is I don't want to see them coach out that Superman ability that he has, because I would rather him throw a few more interceptions that also translate to more touchdowns, as opposed to them saying, we want you to go for the easy, safe ball every single play, as opposed to taking away what made him special at Oklahoma and USC and, going, okay, we turned the ball over less, but, instead of the 30 passing touchdowns, he only has 22. It's that fine balance that I kind of understand, and I would rather take more interceptions and potentially have more highlight level plays and let him learn that way, similar to what Mahomes did. Again, like that first year that he played, he had the 50 passing touchdowns. He also had some high interception rates as well, but no one's worried about the interception rates. And same thing with what you were saying with Peyton Manning. It's like no one's going to look at Peyton Manning and go, oh, you know what? Like, he threw 28 interceptions his rookie season. Like, is he? Like, no, he's a top, like, he's on Mount Rushmore of quarterbacks of all time.
100%, and that's all I was saying is, I hope that the bulk of Bears fans can, fight through some more adversity, because you're going to need to. Like, I don't foresee you guys going, 17-0 and winning the Super Bowl or nothing like that this year or even next year. But as long as there's growth there and Caleb Williams is developing effectively and Matt Eberflus is allowing the knowledgeable coaching staff around him to do their jobs, because we know Eberflus is a defensive mind, former defensive player, defensive coordinator. Like, he's defense. He's, I think that's why he's been leaning on Nick Saban so much, because, that's a man who is very knowledgeable in developing that quarterback position.
Yeah, well, not only that, but he was a defensive-minded guy who was able to develop, and granted, we always joked about Alabama for a lot of years. It was Alabama but no quarterback. And then in the span of like 4 years, it was Alabama quarterback, Alabama quarterback, Alabama quarterback, Alabama quarterback. And, that was due to Nick Saban kind of finally figuring it out.
Yep.
And, it's going to be an interesting situation to see how the Steelers develop Justin Fields, because, again,
if
Eh,
he even can. I mean, if he doesn't rise to the occasion, I would not be shocked to see an entirely new quarterback room again next year in Pittsburgh. You know, they've got the cap space next year. If Jerry Jones keeps fucking around, he might just find out, and we might see Dak Prescott in the black and yellow next year.
That was pretty much going to be my biggest thing, and you and I universally agree on that. Dak Prescott, if he wasn't wearing the Dallas Cowboys star on his helmet, more
Hmm.
people would look at him in a favorable light. It's just everyone hates the Cowboys unless you are a Cowboys fan, and every single player that is on the Cowboys, you just universally kind of knock them down because the universal hate for the Dallas Cowboys. And if Dak Prescott, like both of us agree, he's a top 10 quarterback, we think he's a fringe top 5 quarterback. And if the Steelers, if he goes out into the open market, the Steelers kind of have to be one of the favorites to potentially go out there and get him, because
Yeah.
sure, they're probably going to basically just be saying we're going in all for 1, maybe 2 more years, because they're going to have to pay some premium guys these next few seasons
Hmm.
after that. But it doesn't really matter if you win a Super Bowl.
Well, exactly. And, there's a lot of guys on the defensive side of the ball that I think they understand that what's been missing from this team is that quarterback play.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a, a healthy amount of them will probably look at that and go, okay, well, if they're going to pay for a top 10 fringe top 5 guy, maybe we can take a little bit less to get him in here so we can all win a Super Bowl.
Yeah,
That's the hope. In this league nowadays, we don't see that very often. There's a lot more of the greed and the go and get your bag type of mentality. But honestly, Pittsburgh often doesn't fall in for that. They will go, well, fine. If you want to walk away, then you walk away.
yeah. One of the things that we teased last week that we are going to be doing this week, and something that we started last year and we are basically going to continue moving forward, is our season prediction for our teams. Now, we kind of have gone through a little bit through the offseason of going like, we think this player and this and that, but we're actually going to go through the entire schedules for both of our teams, and both of us have made our predictions for win losses for each individual week for each other's team, and we're going to see how close we can get. And last year when we did this, you and I were really, really close. Like, both of us got perfect for our own predictions for our own teams. And then
Yeah.
on the flip side of things, for us predicting each other's team, we were one game away, I believe, if I'm correct in that statement of like, we might have had it like, I think you might have had the Bears at an 8-9, and I said they were a 7-10 team, and it was some stuff like that, where it was like a 1 game difference. So last year, again, we didn't get the exact games right, but we got the amount of numbers and wins. So it's going to be interesting to see how well we can do with that this particular season, as opposed to kind of like what we did last year.
Yeah, I'm not as confident this year. It's a bit of a mess. Like I had to go through the Steelers schedule like 4 times because I know the first time I went through it, I got to the bye week and it was like, 8, no, that doesn't seem right. I might be fanboying a little bit. I need to go back and look at this. But I mean, every time going through it, I'm reminded that the opening half of this Steelers schedule
It's
is
fairly easy.
fairly easy. The back half is brutal,
Yeah.
especially the final like 7 games. Or what is it? Two? Yeah, like it is just horrible the way the season ends. And so by the time I get to the end of the season, the record's a little more reasonable, but I have a feeling that I might be predicting a little on the high side. There's 1 or 2 games where I'm like I waffled a bit and I ultimately lean towards my Steelers purely based on what they've done historically, and not like last 40 years historically, more the last 15 years. Mike Tomlin's career
Yeah.
historically, and so there's a couple games where I'm sure people are looking at that going, how are you picking the Steelers to win? And it ultimately comes down to the fact that they're primetime games, and that's where I'm like, well, they're really good in primetime. even when they're a bad team, they're really good at prime time.
Yeah, and the Pittsburgh Steelers is exactly where I think we should start. And since you are the Pittsburgh Steelers fan out of the
Yep.
group, I think we should allow you to give your prediction. I have my prediction up here as well. And so
Yep.
you'll go first, and then we'll chat about that, and then I can go, and then we continue our chat. So for week number 1, the Pittsburgh Steelers are facing off against the Atlanta Falcons in Atlanta.
Yep. Yeah, in Atlanta, early game. This is a big one for Arthur Smith. This is a big one for Mike Tomlin because it's, finally moving away from Matt Canada. Can we get things done? Whole new quarterback room. I do have the Pittsburgh Steelers winning this one. I know they've got Kirk Cousins in Atlanta now, but I think the Steelers that defense is going to be a little too hungry to start the season here, and really all the offense will have to do is put up around 20 points. Like I said last year, it's going to be the same thing. If they can score 20 points a game, they're going to be able to win most of these games.
Yeah, actually, I think what we'll do is just give both of our predictions for each of the week. That way, it just stays.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Go through 1 week at a time.
Yeah, I also have the Steelers winning this week. I think, as much as I have criticized the Steelers offense, that defense is very, very, very good. And as long as they walk out of the preseason healthy, which they should realistically be able to do, knock on wood, pray to every god that you possibly can, and they should be able to go out there and beat Atlanta. I have a lot more question marks with Atlanta. 35-year-old quarterback who's coming off of a pretty big injury. Their wide receiver room isn't as good as I think some people are talking about. I like Drake London. I like Darnell Mooney. I think Drake London has the skill set to be a top 15 wide receiver, and Darnell Mooney, these last 2 years hasn't been as good as I would want him to be, but ultimately, I have a lot more reservations about the Atlanta Falcons, and I have more question marks surrounding that team. And it's a situation for your Steelers of where, I've been saying it a lot. I think their defense is ultimately going to be the reason that they win a ton of games this year. It's going to be fairly low scoring, but ultimately, I give your Steelers a win.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's sort of where I was thinking too. I know we've had, some banged up guys throughout training camp and preseason on the defense, so that is a little bit concerning, but none of them are slated to be missing the start of the season at this point, so I think we should be all right there.
Yeah, in week number 2, you guys are traveling to Denver to take on the Broncos.
Yeah, as is all too often, the Steelers start on the road for multiple games each season. The NFL likes to put the Steelers on the road. And so I mentioned that, my first time through, I had the Steelers going all the way to the bye without losing a game. And, I had to go back. I was like, I have to find a loss here somewhere. I have to. And it was hard to do because, Russell Wilson's return to Denver, hopefully being able to stick it to Sean Payton and what went on there. But it's already come out that Broncos have already said they're going to be wearing their glacier white, mile high. They're basically forcing the Steelers to wear their black unis in Denver, on a September afternoon, which could still be quite hot. So this is where I ended up picking out a loss for the Steelers first half of the season, and that's up against the Denver Broncos. I think it'll be close. I think it's going to be an ugly game, but I do think that the Broncos will probably squeeze out a win against the Steelers here.
That, to me, that's actually a bit of a shock because I have your Pittsburgh Steelers winning this game, and I actually have them winning fairly comfortably. Again, we're not doing any score predictions, but when I looked at this game, I look at the Broncos and I go, if there's another team in the NFL right now that could be rivaling the New York Giants for what I think could be at the very bottom of the league, to me, that's the Denver Broncos. They only really have maybe 1 or 2 guys on defense. Their offense is going to be led by either Jared Stidham, Zach Wilson, or Bo Nix, their 25-year-old starting quarterback who's a rookie this year. I love Sean Payton. I really do. I think he's a brilliant, brilliant coach. But I think you put any of those three guys out there against this Steelers defense, it's going to be a rough, rough afternoon. Again, it's not like you're sitting back going like, oh, they have this weapon for, Bo Nix to throw to. You can say Cortland Sutton, but you're looking at Cortland Sutton, and I'm not saying he's a top 20 receiver. He's a good wideout, but is he a wide receiver that, threatens a Steelers defense? Not particularly. Marvin Mims was decent last year, but it's just this offense for the Broncos that I think is really going to struggle against this overwhelming Steelers defense, and the Steelers defense is probably going to be playing pretty hot.
Yeah.
And I just think this is one of those games where I think the Steelers, you're going to look at what their offense does. They're going to put up like 30 points. It's going to be like, oh, they're starting to move it around. But then you start to look at some of those advanced analytics. It's going to be, well, your defense got 3 interceptions and 5 total turnovers in the game and so, you put your offense in really good spots. So it's kind of hard not to put up a bunch of those points when you have a situation like that. So I think Broncos are going to be an easy.
Pittsburgh struggles in Denver too, though, unfortunately. Like the last 2 games they won in Denver were in 2006 and 2009, and like that, those are the only games they've won in Denver in the Mike Tomlin era.
Yeah, I hear you, but
and so that's a tough
team.
one for sure. They definitely struggle in Denver, so that was why that combined with the black uniforms in the heat, I was like, okay, this might be a game that doesn't go the way that Russell Wilson is hoping.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
Moving forward to week number 3.
Yes.
You guys are at home.
Come home. Yeah. Get to come home, play against the LA Chargers. Early game again there. This is a rebuilding Chargers team. Herbert looks good. However, he's been dealing with some injuries here in the preseason as well. Harbaugh will put together a good team, I'm sure, but it won't be good enough. And I think the Steelers walk away with an easy win in week 3 against the Chargers.
See, this is where you and I differ, because I think this is going to be the Steelers' first loss after those first 2 victories that I have them. I think Herbert and Harbaugh, there's going to be a lot of mistakes in those first 2 weeks because, again, Herbert is going to have to kind of get back up to speed. And I think around week 3 is when they're going to start to hit that stride a little bit. And I think it's almost going to be like the Steelers kind of overlooking this Chargers team just a little bit. And again, when you have a top 5 quarterback, you are never out of consideration in a game, in my opinion. And I think the Chargers are going to come out really, really strong. And, the offense is going to have a little bit of a struggle day, I think, against that, rebuilding defense of the Chargers. But they still have some guys out there. Khalil Mack is still there. Joey Bosa is still there. Derwin James is still there. I think the Chargers sneak away with a win. Going to be very, very close. I think Atlanta and the Chargers are going to be close games. I don't think the Broncos game is going to be very close, but a few close games here for your Steelers.
Yeah, definitely. That's a fair assessment for sure.
Now moving to week number 4, where you guys are again on the road. This time you are going into Indianapolis to play the Colts.
Yep. Back on the road into Indy. Anthony Richardson, if he's even still healthy by week 4. And if not, then, Grandpa Joe Flacco. So honestly, this one doesn't concern me as much. Their defense is improving, but it's still not great. And, our defense getting to go play indoors in a dome, I think it's just going to be a cakewalk for that Steeler defense. And they're really going to start firing. I feel like it would be after that Denver loss. But if it's against the Chargers, then it'll be after that Chargers loss where they really start taking off and they pick up a win against Indianapolis as well.
Yeah, I'm full agreement with you. I think going into Indianapolis, playing in a dome, and coming off of a loss to the Chargers, I think is going to be really motivating for the Steelers defense. And Anthony Richardson, a lot of people are talking about him like he's going to be a top 5 quarterback this year. And you and I kind of continue to sit back and go, let's pump the love breaks here, guys. He played in 4 games and he almost didn't finish a single one of them. Like he had some moments, but the health is a massive thing, and he's not going to change the way that he plays because that's pretty much the only thing that he can kind of do right now. And I think the Steelers are going to absolutely feast on this Indianapolis offense. I think they're going to get after Anthony Richardson. And the best thing about having Justin Fields on your team is they can look at him and go, you're basically just going to be Anthony Richardson this week. You are going to run around and do everything that you possibly can. Anthony Richardson, a little bit taller, a little bit heavier than Justin Fields, but you can still get a pretty good idea, because if your defense can get after Fields that particular week, then they should be able to hold up against Anthony Richardson. I think the Colts are potentially a little bit overrated this particular year. So I think this is going to be I don't think this is going to be a close game for your Steelers, but I think they'll win comfortably.
Yeah, I think so too. This is an easy one. And then we go into week 5. This is one of those primetime games. Back at home, we have the Dallas Cowboys coming to Pittsburgh. 8 o'clock game on Sunday night. We know the Steelers play really well Sunday Night Football. This is one that will probably be one that surprises people. I do have the Steelers winning this.
Yeah. Anything extra?
No. I mean, I just they perform so well during prime time. It doesn't really matter who's playing quarterback. The defense they get after these top quarterbacks, and I think they're going to make Dak Prescott very uncomfortable, and maybe even be just making that case to him of going, do you really want to play in Dallas still, or do you want to come play here where you don't have to go up against us anymore?
Yeah, I think this is going to be an incredibly fun game to watch. I think it's going to be incredibly close. The difference for me, though, is I look at the Steelers' offense going up against that Dallas defense, and to me that's the ultimate factor. Is I have the Cowboys winning this game. I do, because
I think most people probably do.
Yeah, I love the Steelers when they play on prime time. I think they're a very good team. We see how good they do, especially on Sunday night football in Pittsburgh. Great atmosphere. I think the Cowboys are just going to be a little bit too much on this offense. If your offense had maybe 1 or 2 guys different out there, I think it'd be a different story. But I think this is going to be a pretty low-scoring game. I would be surprised if we see either team get above 20 points. I'm not saying combined. I'm just saying, it could very easily end in a 17-14 type game. Unfortunately, I just think Dallas is going to be on the winning side of that, just because I trust their offense a little bit more against your defense, and I don't trust your offense against their defense.
Yep, that's fair.
Next up, you're going to Las Vegas, baby. This time taking on either Gardner Minshew or Aiden O'Connell, taking on the Las Vegas Raiders, but they got some boys on defense.
Well, yeah, they're sort of in a similar position to us, except they don't have the veteran presence of a Russell Wilson.
Yeah.
They don't really know what they've got at quarterback, and, they're rolling with something that isn't top tier for sure. This is another one, much like that Dallas game where I waffled a little bit. I ultimately ended up picking Pittsburgh in that Dallas one because of the prime time. This one, I'm still sort of on the fence about. I did select the Steelers to win this one just because I think their defense will outperform the Raiders' defense. But this is one that could very easily be a swayed one for me, just because it's going to be a tough, violent, gritty game. It's going to feel like watching Raiders Steelers of the 70s is what I feel like this is going to be like.
Yeah. I know throughout the entire offseason, I've been talking about the Raiders in a way that makes it seem like I think the Raiders are going to be a spectacular team this year. I have your Steelers winning this game. I think the only reason it's going to be even semi-close is because Mad Max Crosby and Christian Wilkins are going to be able to work this young offensive line and make it trickier for the Steelers to move the ball. However, on the Raiders' offensive side of the ball, it's very well known I have question marks about your offense. I have a lot more question marks about the Raiders' offense than I do the Steelers. You have an unproven guy in Aiden O'Connell who struggles to hit his number one receiver. You have a play caller that I think was one of the worst in football. Granted, I also think the Steelers have one of that, but I think, it's basically a toss-up of who's the worst guy in that occasion. And even if you have Gardner Minshew in there, I'm still not as confident. They have the better wide receiver and tight end duo. I just don't know if this offense for the Raiders is going to be consistent. And again, this is one of those games where I should probably step back and say we're going to need to see how Max and Christian Wilkins play with each other. If it's not as elite as we once thought, then it's a different story. But if they're top tier, it could be a lot closer. I have the Steelers winning because I have such concerns with Luke Getsy as their play caller and whoever's going to be going in at quarterback. I feel much more comfortable having Gardner Minshew in there, but is he going to be able to compete against, a Joey Porter Jr. and then having, TJ Watt coming from him and the rest of your defense just going to be there. And I think it's going to be a tough day for the Raiders. It's not going to be an easy game for the Steelers by any means, but I give them the win.
Yeah, and I think the Raiders will have a better opportunity to win if it is Gardner Minshew running that offense because he's got more familiarity with the Steelers defense. He played against them last year when he was in Indianapolis.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be definitely beneficial for them if they had Minshew instead of O'Connell, but who knows what they're thinking in Vegas right now.
Yeah, now heading back home for a 2-game stretch. This time you're going up against the New York Jets.
Yeah, this 2-game stretch, it's back-to-back primetime and back-to-back New York teams. And these were easy ones for me, honestly. The Jets, I don't expect Aaron Rodgers to still be hanging around by week 7. From what I've seen of him, the little I've seen of him, which is concerning in itself that we've seen so little out of him after that bad injury last year, I don't think he's going to be the same Aaron Rodgers. And so whether he's there or not, I don't think he'll still be around by week 7. I think he's going to end up injuring himself again because he tries to do too much. He still behaves as though he's 25 and he's in his 40s. So I don't think it'll be good for them. And again, prime time at home, Steelers, I think they're able to pull out a win against this Jets team.
I have the Steelers losing this game. Whenever I try to criticize Aaron Rodgers preseason, it comes back to bite me. And last year this Jets team was primed to make a long playoff run with Aaron Rodgers. They still have, in my opinion, they have a better roster than what they did last year. They have a more consistent offensive line. They have more weapons than just Garrett Wilson. I think Aaron Rodgers, he's going to be healthy. And I think he's going to be 80% of what we've seen from Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay that last year that he was there, the MVP year. And if that's the case, I think the Steelers are really going to struggle because I think the Jets also have a really, really good defense. Sauce Gardner, I think most people would consider him the top corner in the NFL. We all know my opinion on that. I think he's number 2 behind Jalen Johnson. But they also have another corner on their team. Sorry, forgetting his name, but he's also really solid. And it's going to be a situation for me where I look at this and I say, Robert Saleh, he's going to be going into prime time, but if Aaron Rodgers is healthy, it's hard for me to bet against him, especially when he's going to be, if he's still playing at this point and he's not injured, he's going to be kind of getting to the swing of the season. He's going to completely understand where his guys are. He's going to have that connection. He's not going to have the rust on him anymore at that point. I think the Steelers they get beaten there, and it ultimately comes down to the offensive side of the ball struggling against a good defense.
Yeah, that's fair. I just, as I said, fully expect the Jets to be in a similar situation with the offense struggling against a good defense.
Yeah, it's I just yeah,
Yeah.
I know exactly what you mean.
Like I said, leading up to the bye week, I have a feeling I'm over predicting the Steelers this season. Even with their final record, I'm sure I'm off on it. So I don't think I'll be hitting it this year. I looked at these games and I can't pick the other team over Pittsburgh right now. When we get to week 7 and I've seen both of these teams performing,
Different
that
story.
may change.
Yeah.
We discussed that before. It's just looking at it now, seeing what I've seen up to this point from both squads. I feel like
we could be going into
Pittsburgh's
week
got that
2
edge.
and having completely different opinions of going, okay, well, the offense is terrible, the defense is completely fallen off, and like I get it. Yeah, no, I do.
Yeah.
So, tell me how bad you think the Steelers are gonna shit kick the Giants.
I mean, it's probably going to be pretty bad, especially if they do lose to the Jets the week before. If they lose to the one New York team first, then they're really going to shit kick those Giants. It'll be the defense doing it, unless by this point Russell Wilson has reemerged as a top 15 quarterback somehow, or Justin Fields has come in and is starting to perform. Again, that's what makes this so difficult. Is a lot of what I'm basing this on is how the defense is going to perform, because I don't know what the offense is going to look like yet.
Yeah, that's kind of the same situation with me.
Right? And I'm hoping Najee Harris has a breakout year here as well. And so it's tough to say. But the Giants, we've talked about it all offseason that they're going to be in the top 3 for finishing dead last this year. And so I don't think the Giants have any chance in hell on Monday night in Pittsburgh. It's just not going to happen. So this will likely be the first blowout win we see the Steelers able to get this year.
Yeah, I think by week 8, like we've talked about, we like the Giants defense. We like a lot of players on that Giants defense. I think at this point, week 8, this is going to be massive fatigue for the Giants defense, because they're going to be looking at what the offense is doing, what Daniel Jones is doing, and going, we're out there for 50 minutes of a 60-minute game. We can't keep doing it anymore, and there's just going to be injuries. They're going to be tired, and I think ultimately at that point, you never really want to say this, but I think the Giants are going to quit.
Yeah.
Dable might be fired at this point in the year. We all know our opinions on Daniel Jones. If he's playing, that's probably the worst case scenario for the Giants. We've already seen Malik Neighbors be pretty disappointed in the passes that he's been trying to receive. In the Lions game on Thursday, he didn't look terribly happy. He basically walked to the sidelines and was going, it's 4 years of this.
Yep.
And
though was Daniel Jones even in for any of that game though?
Yes.
And how much of it? More than one drive?
I don't remember, but it was enough to make Malik Neighbors look depressed.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like I saw that it was the backups that were playing the bulk of that game, and we didn't see a lot of Daniel Jones.
It might have just been one drive that they were in there for, but neither of us think the Giants are going to be doing anything of note this year, especially if Daniel Jones is playing quarterback. But week number 9, you guys have your bye week. And then
we do, and it'll be a much needed break, and I think we need to break here as well. Because my cat won't stop fucking screaming.
yeah.
So I'm gonna have to make you cut this. I've been calling Frank nonstop, hoping to wake her up from her nap to deal with this, but she's not, so I'm gonna have to.
All good, my dude. All good.
Fuck, you're annoying. Fucking hell.
Did you just throw her in the room?
Like, she just wouldn't stop screaming.
Yeah. Did she just want your guys' bedroom type situation?
Well, what was that?
Did she just want
No, she wanted food.
Oh.
Yeah, she wanted food. But she waited till after we started to say anything. She was in there sleeping with her until we started, and then after we're going for like 10 minutes, then she comes out and just starts screaming her fucking bitch head off.
So after the bye
week 9, bye week, and then after the bye week, we get into week 10. That bye week's going to be important. Whether the record is gone the way I've predicted thus far or the way you've predicted thus far, you've got a few more losses in there, and it'll be important for the Steelers to find what's wrong during that bye week if that's the case, because the back half of the schedule is
tough.
Honestly, it's the hardest back half of any team's schedule in the NFL this season. And so if it's going the way I've predicted up to this point, then they'll still need to be pinpointing what's been going right so that they can try and make it work through those final 7 games. Luckily, week 10, it's a game in Washington against the Commanders, and Mike Tomlin and this Pittsburgh defense, they feast on rookie quarterbacks. So yeah, Jaden Daniels, he's great. He looks, amazing. He looks like he's going to be a big thing for Washington. Mind you, we said the same thing about RG3. And there's been a lot of comparisons there. And so the question is, will he still be healthy? Will he still be the guy by week 10? I don't think it matters. I think this Steelers defense coming off of a bye week, they're usually looking really good. They're ready to fire. And I think they'll go into Washington and get another win here.
Yeah, I have to completely agree with that. I look at this Commanders team. Their biggest need this offseason, and you and I said it going into the offseason, was we said that they should probably keep Sam Howell and draft an O-lineman. They elected to trade Sam Howell away and draft Jaden Daniels. Sure, Jaden Daniels is a much better quarterback. He has no offensive line in front of him. And the Steelers, they feast on rookie quarterbacks, but they really feast on rookie quarterbacks that have no O-line in front of them.
Yep.
It's not like the Commanders' defense is that good either. They're fairly underwhelming. So this should be one of those games, kind of essentially back-to-back, a little bit easier teams, an easy team to ease yourself into the bye week and an easy team to ease yourself out of the bye week before you get into what I'm calling the hell gauntlet.
Yeah, it is. They're going to go through hell after that Washington game. So I hope they have fun, because the rest of the season is not going to be fun for this Pittsburgh team. I'm hoping by this point, Mike Tomlin's got everybody in line and they're not doing any looking ahead to, future games, and focus week to week on what they've got. Week 11, first division game up against Baltimore in Pittsburgh. These games are always so much fun to watch. Honestly, like, the two most fun rivalries in the NFL are Ravens Steelers, closely followed by Bears Packers. And it's because these teams, it's always low scoring affairs. It's always gritty, tough football. This is going to be fun. It's going to be Patrick Queen going up against his former team. It's Derrick Henry now. King Henry there with Lamar Jackson. Are they going to have the chemistry that they're hoping by this point? I have the Steelers pulling out a win at home in a close, likely messy game. Like, we're getting into I think, November by this point, and so it's going to be rainy, it's going to be cold, it's going to be gross, as we often see with these teams, and it's going to be who's got the better run stopping defense, and I think the Steelers will have that.
Yeah, like you said, this is one of the best rivalries in the NFL. You and I are obviously going to be on the different sides of the coin of that rivalry. I still think it's Bears versus Packers. Granted, I just because of the history of it, of it being one sided for this time for so long, one sided for and just kind of going back and forth. But you hit the nail on the head. These are very, very entertaining games to watch. Both of these two teams have, I think it's 1-2 for the longest tenured head coaches in the NFL right now. Obviously with Tomlin and Harbaugh. I
mean, the other thing to factor in too is Baltimore has only won one of the last 8 meetings between these two teams.
Yeah. I think they're going to get their second one early at this point in the season. I think Lamar Jackson will still be performing pretty well at this point in the year, and he's still going to be looking fairly good. Derrick Henry isn't going to be as bloodied and bruised as opposed to when they start to get to later portions of the year. It's going to be a close game. It is going to be a close game. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch. But I do have the Ravens sneaking away. We often see the Ravens get that last second field goal. Justin Tucker magic. I think this could potentially be one of those games. It's going to just be an absolute bloodbath, but close. I think it's just going to be really tough for me to look at. Granted, the Ravens defense did get worse. Again, it's just that offense that ultimately pulls me back a little bit, and so it's going to be very close, though.
No, that's fair. And I mean, I'll give you the little spoiler for later. I do also have the Ravens getting their second win in the last however many years against the Steelers team this season. It's just coming later in the year, because they often will win a game on a last minute kick, but not often in Pittsburgh, because it's very hard to kick in Pittsburgh when it's rainy and windy. That's why we've seen Harbaugh on multiple occasions go for it late on 4th down instead of going for that field goal to tie it up, because he knows that it's not a sure thing.
Yeah, and spoiler alert here, I have your Steelers winning in Week 16 against the Baltimore Ravens. I think at that point, the health of Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry are probably going to be a little bit less, and I think Lamar Jackson, when he gets closer to the end of the season, he starts to play a little bit worse, because that's when the games start to matter a little bit more. And so again, this is just one of those series that you look at every single year and go, they're going to split. It's very rare that we don't see them split a series and one team gets the advantage. So
which is why it's so surprising in the last 4 years that the Steelers have swept 3 of those 4 years.
Yeah. But Week 12, another division rivalry game. Gonna be a lot of that.
Yep, we're starting here on the road tour through hell, the AFC North, and it's gonna be ugly. This is a Thursday game, prime time, which usually I will pick the Steelers to win, but honestly, after the bruising game 4 days earlier against Baltimore, I just don't think Pittsburgh's going to have anything left in the tank for a Thursday game against Cleveland, and they're going to go into Cleveland, and Cleveland's probably going to dismantle this Pittsburgh team and get a lot of people talking about, Cleveland's going to go on a run to make the playoffs, or, this is Pittsburgh falling apart. It's all going to be bullshit, though. It's purely going to be Cleveland's winning this game because Pittsburgh is just absolutely demolished from playing against Baltimore 4 days earlier. So Cleveland will get themselves a win at home against Pittsburgh.
See, I have the Browns losing this game. I think the Steelers, yes, they will be bloodied and bruised, but I think they're going to be walking into this Thursday game going, we essentially have a mini bye after this. So we have to go out there and we're playing against Deshaun Watson. As you and I have discussed many times, we don't think Deshaun Watson is that quarterback anymore. And, the Browns' defense didn't get better. I think TJ Watt is going to be basically looking over across the sideline to Myles Garrett saying, "You got Defensive Player of the Year last year? Should have been me." And I think this Steelers defense is going to have kind of one of just those magical performances, kind of like what we saw against the Browns last year at the beginning of the year, where it was just the offense maybe not necessarily performing well against the Browns defense. It's just the Steelers defense. They are so motivated. Yeah, they played a tough bruising game, but I think they're looking at going, we're going to have essentially a mini bye week to just kind of get ourselves recovered before we have to go up against the Bengals. I think with how the Browns and Deshaun Watson are playing, I think the Steelers take it.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I think they're just going to be too beat up, and look into that, that mini bye after a Thursday game. I looked at that too, and I was like, okay, week 13, had that mini bye. Now we're going into Cincinnati, and I think so much of that extra time is going to be spent on recuperating that they're not going to be able to appropriately prepare for Joe Burrow, and they're unfortunately going to go in and lose to Cincinnati as well. So I have them losing back-to-back to Cleveland and Cincy on the road.
Yeah, for me, I think the Bengals and Joe Burrow, they're going to have that type of year where they're going to be competing not just for the division title, but they're going to be looking at Super Bowl this year.
Mhm.
I think the Bengals are going to be a really, really tough team at this point. They may only have maybe 1 or 2 losses at this point in the year. They're just going to be humming on and just rolling through exactly what they need to do. And I think coming off of that mini bye, they might just be kind of trying to recuperate and continue to look and go like, oh, well, we have the Browns next week, then we have the Eagles, then Ravens, Chiefs, Bengals again, and there's just going to be so much, and I think the Bengals take this one.
Yeah, I think the Burrow and company will just be too much, and by this point, the Steelers are beat up. Baltimore and Cleveland back to back. Baltimore's always gritty, and then Cleveland, one of the best defenses in the league.
And it's not like these games against the Bengals are, clean and gentlemanly.
Nope.
We've talked about what the Steelers and Ravens are. The Steelers and Bengals get violent.
Oh yeah.
Those are violent games.
If by this point the Steelers have got something clicking on offense, this could go very differently because the Bengals, as we've discussed at length this
don't
offseason,
have an amazing defense.
They have easily the worst defense in this division.
Easily.
Right, and probably one of the worst defenses in the AFC as a whole. They are not good on defense.
Yep.
And so we continue going into week 14 with our tour of AFC North. We play Cleveland again, this time at home, and this is where the Steelers will exact the revenge on Cleveland and get themselves a win after that tough Thursday night loss a couple weeks earlier. It'll be gritty, it'll be rough. But yeah, I think the Steelers at this point, with how I've got them shaking out, they're looking at this going, man, we're about to go into the worst 3-game stretch that any team has seen in a long time. We have to get a win here. And they find a way to do so against Cleveland.
Yeah. I also have them winning. I have them sweeping the Browns this year in their season series. Again, I don't know what we're going to see from this Browns offense. Is Nick Chubb going to be back at this point? Is he going to be the same back? Is Deshaun Watson going to be good? Stefanski last year, Coach of the Year, rightfully deserved it because of the amount of quarterbacks that he had to utilize and win with. I think the Browns are going to take a step back, unfortunately, this year, just because I think all of their efforts and kind of that luck with some of the quarterback stuff that they had last year is just kind of running out, and Deshaun Watson just isn't going to be that guy. Again, I could be completely wrong. We could be seeing the old Deshaun Watson. And if that's the case, I know you're shaking your head, but the possibility is there.
Yeah.
There is that possibility. Now, I think it's like that, but yeah, like I said, I think the Steelers sweep the series. I think they look at the Browns this year and go, you know, the last couple of years you've been making a lot of noise, and we know we don't have necessarily the great offense. We still have this defense, and
Yep.
hopefully at this point the Steelers offense is starting to be a little bit more efficient. It has to be, from what we've seen from years past with Lord knows Kenny Pickett and Matt Canada. But yeah, I think a win here.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so too. And as I said, that's before this horrible trio of games, which I'm just gonna put it out there right now, and then we'll talk about the games. But I've got this set as a loss. Like, this is a bad run for the Steelers. They're gonna be in a bad position all throughout, and it's gonna be hard for them to bounce back. And so first up in Week 15, they're going on the road to Philadelphia, playing against one of the best teams in the NFC, and it's going to be tough because this is the point where they're going to be starting to look ahead, because they've got Philly, sure, but then they
You
know they
got
have a short
Baltimore.
week and Baltimore at the end of it.
Yep.
And so I think that's ultimately going to hurt them, and they're going to come up short against this Eagles team in Week 15.
Yeah, I still think the Philadelphia Eagles are one of the best constructed rosters in the entire NFL. And again, I'm still a big fan of Jalen Hurts. I think he can be a really good quarterback. I think the Eagles are also going to take this game. I think they're just going to be too much on defense for the Steelers offense to handle. And I think their defense this year is going to be a hell of a lot better, especially with the secondary, that level of improvement. And then you look at their offense going up against the Steelers defense. They've just gone through a division gauntlet. They're gonna start to
Yep.
feel that exhaustion, and they're gonna be kind of going like, okay, we've just been kind of it's been a tough road. But yeah, the Eagles getting this victory. We already kind of talked about this game against the Ravens. You have them losing. I have them actually winning this game. I think they actually kind of, again, it's that split series. It's just kind of one of those things. Again, they're going to take a game. You could put it either way, really, of who's going to win. I think both teams are going to go into each other's home and take a win. Again, like what I said with the Ravens, I think Lamar Jackson is going to be a little beat up. I think Derrick Henry isn't going to be quite the same. So that's why I have them winning this game. And then,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I have them losing this game simply because they're still playing the we're looking ahead game at this point, and unfortunately they're tough short week after a loss to the Eagles, and then going into Baltimore of all things, and they're going to be looking at it going, well, we had a short week here, and now we've only got 3 days, and then we have to play Kansas City at home on Christmas, and so they're going to be looking ahead to that, and I think that's going to hurt them as well. So ultimately, they're going to lose here in Baltimore too.
yeah, Kansas City at this point, week 17, they're going to be kind of in this mode of where they're looking at things going, we are fighting for that number one spot. And
Yep.
it's Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. Unless there's massive injuries for the Kansas City Chiefs at this point in the year, they're going to be dialed in. They are going to be running like a smooth, efficient machine. And yeah, I think the Steelers are just going to be kind of lost in the sauce. And again, with some of the short games that they've had, short turnaround from games, I should say, it's going to be really tough.
Yeah, it's going to be disappointing because you always hope for a team when they get to play at home on Christmas that they're able to pull out a win for their fans, but I just don't see it happening, unfortunately. So it'll be a rough Christmas for me too, because it's even a shitty Christmas work-wise for me because it falls right in the middle of the week, so I only get
You only get the
little
day.
time off.
Yeah.
Usually we get like a 4 or 5 day break at my job, and it's only like 2. So it's
Yeah,
like I'm watch the
terrible.
Steelers lose and then go back to work, basically. So yeah, I do have them losing again. It's unfortunate, but like I said, the front half of this schedule, I had them win a lot of games, and they went on a stretch here, between week 12 and week 17 where they only win one, out of those is how I've got it. And then it's almost like another mini bye that they've got here. Closer to a full bye because they play on a Wednesday and then they don't play again until we don't know yet. It's to be determined. We don't know whether it'll be
A
week 18
Sunday or
Saturday, Sunday,
Saturday.
or Monday. It'll likely fall to where the schedule is. And,
Yes.
if things bounce the way I've got them so far, this will have the Steelers sitting at 10 wins right now and likely needing a win in week 18 to make the playoffs. Whereas I expect the Bengals to already have their playoff spot locked up, whether that's 1 or 2, I'm not sure. And I don't think we see a lot of the Cincinnati starters playing. And as a result, I think the Steelers are able to turn the ship around after that rough 3-game losing streak and win here in week 18 against Cincinnati and punch themselves a ticket into the playoffs yet again.
Yeah, I have the Steelers winning this game, but there was one thing that you said in there where that was my entire reasoning is I think the Bengals, they're either going to have the first spot or second spot locked up. They can't move up. They can't, fall back. They're just going to go. There's no reason to play anyone. We're not going to play Joe. We're not going to play Jamar. The only way that we would see any of those guys, unless a historic record is potentially going to be broken, which I'm not entirely sure we're going to potentially see that, but yeah, I give the Steelers a win, and my prediction for their year for the record is 10-7, and I believe you have them at 11-6.
Yes, yeah, and I think I'm wrong. I think they probably will end up 10-7. I couldn't decide
It's
where to give them that other loss. Honestly, that was the toughest thing for me. I think you're probably more correct at that 10-7, but I've got them at 11-6, and like I said, if their offense can find its identity early in the season here, and Arthur Smith is able to get Najee Harris on a, vintage Derrick Henry-esque run where he's putting up 1,500 plus yards this season, that is going to bode well for me being more accurate with my prediction at 11-6. If they can't get anything going and it starts looking like Matt Canada's old playbook of run it up the middle on second down, and then throw a screen pass on third down, then we're screwed.
Yeah, it's a little bit more of an uh-oh type situation, but
Yes.
both of us have the Steelers getting double-digit wins. They're staying far away from that, Mike Tomlin getting his first losing season. With that being said, if there was going to be a year where they would have a losing season, this kind of has that feeling of the year that it could potentially be, but you just look at some of it and go, it'd be very hard to pick that.
Well, and I mean, like, we said that last year. And I mean, ultimately, even though there's question marks around this offense this year, it's still better than it was last year. Even with the lacking wide receivers, even with the question marks in the quarterback room, it still looks better than what we had last season, with what we had for quarterbacks and Matt Canada. It's still a better situation. And so that's where I feel like unless something happens where we lose both those quarterbacks, then I could see him having that losing season. But if either one of them stays healthy through to week 18, then I think double digits and a likely playoff berth as that 6th or 7th wild card is very likely Steelers this year.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one. It's wild card, probably 6th or 7th seed going into the playoffs, and unfortunately for the Steelers in that situation, depending on who they play, you kind of got to hope that team that's ahead of them is really, really banged up, because it just kind of has that making of a situation of like, well, it has all the hallmarks to just be another, okay, we made it to the playoffs.
One and done.
Yep.
Yeah.
We're delayed.
I know that's very, very possible. It'll depend on how the the standings shake out and where Pittsburgh has to travel to in that first week. But we talk about it every year.
Yes.
Once you get to the playoffs, it's like the season is starting all over. Yeah, you've got some banged up guys, but so do they.
Yep.
And so it really will come down to who is able to get rolling at the right time. And my hope, honestly, will be that after that 3-game losing streak, they can look at it and go, well, we're going to be facing, 3 really good teams again, but we're not going to have to do it all in the span of 10 days this.
Yeah, but
yeah,
there's so much time before we can even start to think about playoffs that's a whole new discussion. But yeah, again, both of us only 1 game difference between each other, which doesn't seem as a big shock. But yeah, both very good records for your Pittsburgh Steelers and my Chicago Bears. And if you've been watching the channel for pretty much the entirety of the offseason, you would know that everything has gone Chicago's way this offseason. They get the number 1 pick. They don't mess it up and not draft the unicorn prospect at quarterback. You get a generationally talented wide receiver with your second top 10 pick. You trade for a Hall of Fame wide receiver for basically nothing. And you just continue to add. And again, as someone who is more of a half glass empty type of guy when looking at my team, it's pretty much known that it's like I'm kind of in this little bit of a shocked, almost terrified state of looking at this team because it's been going so well.
Yep.
Going into this year and looking at the schedule, I was having, again, I'm more glass half empty type of guy when looking at my team because they have burned me so many times. And I think you'll just have to wait and see to my prediction for it. But
that's fair. And I mean, like I looked through this schedule too, and it's a little more balanced, I would say. Like you've got some good teams, some bad teams, and there's sort of a spattering throughout. Like I know my predictions have your Bears sort of struggling to find their identity through the start of the season, but there will be a point where they just sort of everything starts clicking for them until they hit a roadblock.
Yeah, the Bears have kind of a similar situation where the beginning portion of their season, it starts out a lot easier. Now, granted, the Steelers have a much easier start to their season than the Bears do. The Bears have, in my opinion, 3 tough teams in the first 10 weeks.
Yeah.
After that part, though, that's when it starts to go into kind of like the division gauntlet, similar to your Pittsburgh Steelers. But in week number 1, the Chicago Bears go up against the Tennessee Titans. You and I at home, both of us have kind of agreed that we don't think the Titans are gonna be all that much this year.
Nope.
Last year, I was really concerned with how Matt Eberflus was going to have the team prepared for week 1, and they fell completely flat against the Green Bay Packers in the opener last year. I think Matt Eberflus has learned from that, and he's going, this team is not going to be underprepared going into week number 1. And Caleb Williams, again, I got to watch him today, so again, this might just be, recency bias. I think the Bears are going to absolutely demolish the Tennessee Titans. I think the Titans, they don't have that great of a defense. They don't have that great of an offense. I think everything's just going to be clicking. I think people are going to look at this game and go, oh, for the Bears. They're kind of be looking at this going, they might have just unlocked a sleeping giant.
Yep. Yeah, I don't know about a blowout, but again, I didn't really look too much at what the scores might be when I did this, but I do also have your Bears starting off this season strong with a win against, which will give the Bears fans lots of hope. Home game to start the season, big win. Caleb Williams will look good. Things are trending upwards for the Bears. And then week 2 happens, and they have to travel to Houston and play Sunday Night Football.
Yeah. I am not going to sit back and try to fool anyone and say, oh, the Bears are going to walk into Houston and, it's going to be the CJ Stroud of last year and the CJ Stroud of this year and this, and that. I think this is going to be a close game. I do. I think the Texans maybe are being hyped up a little bit more so than what they should be because they have a guy like CJ Stroud. And I still think there are holes there that were, you know, people are kind of overlooking. So I think this is going to be a close game. I do think the Texans are going to walk away the victors in this one, but I think it's going to be close. I think it's going to be a lot closer than a lot of people are probably going to predict it to be.
Yeah. Yeah, this is, Hall of Fame game 2.0. This is the Hall of Fame game that, all us real football fans really wanted to see.
Yes.
Like I get it, it's preseason. Nobody's gonna play their starters and stuff, but it almost feels like they should just tab this as the Hall of Fame game.
Yeah.
Because it's the two teams we wanted to see. We wanted to see Caleb Williams against CJ Stroud. And so now we're gonna get it in week 2, and I do have to agree with you. I have the Bears losing this week to Houston.
Yeah. Going into week 3, the Bears travel to Indianapolis to take on the Indianapolis Colts. After the tough game Sunday Night Football, I think Caleb, he's not going to be pretty happy about that. He's going to be fairly upset. And I think the Bears defense is going to be fairly upset. And they are going to go out there and look for someone to take it out on. And it just so happens to be, unfortunately, the Indianapolis Colts. And I think, again, I've had my questions about Anthony Richardson. Is he going to be healthy? Is his offensive line going to be good enough to stop Montez Sweat coming by and introducing himself saying hi? I think the Bears, they walk into this game against the Indianapolis Colts and they say, I think it's going to be closer than what we saw from the Texans, but I think they go into Indianapolis and walk away with a victory.
Yeah. I also do think the Bears are going to have the bounce back week this week after the tough loss to Houston and, going, okay, maybe we don't quite have it all together yet, but we've got it more together than this Colts team does, and we need to show that. And I think that's what they do is they go out there and they put together a complete game, and again, it'll look great for Bears fans. They're like, okay, Caleb looked good again. He struggled last week against the Texans and we couldn't get it done, but here he is again. That was just a speed bump. So yeah, I do have the Bears winning also in week 3 against the Colts.
Yeah, in week number 4, they have a tougher opponent in the LA Rams. They are at home for their second home game of the year. And I think just the confidence that this Rams offense is going to have and some of their new life that they're going to have on the defense is just going to be the combination that ultimately wins the Rams this game. I think the Bears, they're going to give it a hell of a shot, and I think they might lose by, 4 points in this particular game. It's going to be another close, tough fought battle. Caleb's going to be doing pretty much all he can against this Rams defense. Granted, they don't have to go up against Aaron Donald, thank God. But I just think it's going to be a situation of where the Rams are just going to be just a little too much in each aspect. They have the more experienced quarterback with some really good experienced weapons. It's not like Caleb doesn't have experienced weapons out there. They have undoubtedly a better offensive play caller, and unfortunately for the Bears in this situation is who did Shane Waldron learn from? Sean McVay. So it's not like Sean McVay isn't going to be able to go to his defense and say, you already know what they're running because this is our offense. So I for those reasons, I think the Rams are going to take this. And so unfortunately in September the Bears go 2-2, but it's going to be a lot of really exciting football.
Right? Yeah, this is sort of the first real litmus test for this Bears team. They start the season off just going up against AFC teams, and then here's their first test against an NFC contender, really. This is a team that we all expect to make the playoffs in the NFC. And so this is a real test for the Bears of what can they hang with the other playoff teams in this conference. And I do agree that I think they're going to fall just a little bit short up against this Rams squad that they have the experience, and that's what it's going to come down to. They have more experience. They have that offensive-minded coach, and I think it's just they're going to be able to show why they are the yearly, we're getting into the playoffs team, whereas the Bears are the team on the rise.
Yeah. The week following is one of the weeks that I am extremely looking forward to, because it's essentially the Bears looking at the team that gave an entire package of just unbelievable players to Chicago to draft one guy, and that being Bryce Young. And I think Caleb Williams, we know he is, people would say cocky. I say he is extremely confident, but I think he's going to look at this and go, you know what? I'm a Bears man. And this is what they gave up to draft this guy, when in reality, they could have had me. They chose this guy. I think Caleb Williams is going to look at this and go, we had a tough game against the Rams. I think the Bears destroy the Panthers. Last year, when the Bears played the Panthers, I said this is going to be the DJ Moore revenge game, and Justin Fields was going to have an outstanding game, and this, that, and the other thing. I think this is going to be the real, the Panthers, they kept it close in that primetime game last year on Thursday night. This isn't going to be a close game. This is going to be the Bears going, aw, thanks for everything, guys.
Yeah, thanks for rebuilding our team for us.
Yeah.
Is basically what that is. And yeah, I agree. This is going to be an absolute beatdown. DJ Moore is going to go off. Caleb Williams is going to find him probably for 2 or 3 touchdowns. It's going to be an exciting game for Bears fans, just watching them absolutely dismantle a Carolina team that has the potential to go winless this year.
Yeah. Now, I think the Panthers will be better than what they were last year, but I don't think they're going to be much better. Instead of being a 2-win team, they might be a 3 or a 4-win team. They're still going to be at the bottom half. And the other big reason for the Bears wanting to win this game is if that they knock this team down more, that just means their second round pick that they still have from the Panthers is just that much better.
Yep.
Following that week, the Bears cross the pond and go into foggy old London town to play the Jacksonville Jaguars, because the Jags always play there. This is going to be a really interesting matchup, because this is the battle of the generational prospect quarterbacks. Both teams have made a lot of improvements. That being said, I do think the Bears are going to win this game. They play well in London. It's almost like a second home over there for them as well. Whenever they travel, they have a lot of Bears fans. This is also technically a home game for the Bears. I think if the Bears are smart and Matt Eberflus is smart, the second that, on October 7th, as opposed to October, they're going to fly over to London. They're going to spend the week there knowing that they have a bye week after, saying we're going to get fully acclimatized to this time zone. And I think the Bears are going to be the better team against the Jacksonville Jaguars. It's going to be very close. It's going to be one of those things of going, okay, we went up against a good team in the Houston Texans. We lost. We went up against a good team in the LA Rams. We lost. Now we're going up against a good team in the Jacksonville Jaguars. We win this time. And it's going to be one of those games where I think the NFL is going to say, okay, this is another big test. Can you beat teams that aren't just kind of middle of the pack or lower? Can you beat one of those teams? And the Bears are going to walk out there and say, yes, we can.
Yeah, I didn't look into whether this is going to be Jacksonville's first week in the UK or if it's week 2, 3, because the way they've been doing it is they sort of just leave them over there for a couple weeks now.
Yeah.
And so that will play a part, but even so, honestly, I think the Bears kind of blow their wad when they play Carolina and they put it all out there. And I think they're going to go into this game against Jacksonville behaving like they're still playing Carolina, and I think it's going to bite them. and therefore I do think they're going to stumble, and Jacksonville will pull out the win against them and hand Bears another loss and keep them riding that 500 wave.
In week 7, the Bears obviously have that bye, but exiting the bye, they have quite possibly the perfect team to exit the bye on, and that is the Washington Commanders. Again, a team where they kind of looked at and said, oh, thanks for one of your best players, Montez Sweat. This is going to be the Montez Sweat revenge game. Last time that the Bears played the Commanders in Washington, DJ Moore had quite the good afternoon.
Yep.
And he has a much better quarterback throwing him the ball this time. I think the Bears, they bully the Panthers, or pardon me, well, they're bullying the Panthers, but they're going to bully the Commanders. I think Jaden Daniels, he's going to be under duress. That's going to be the big story. It's pick number 1 versus pick number 2. And unfortunately for pick number 2, the team that he's on, the offensive line, is just not going to be able to hold up. Again, this Bears pass rushing isn't super stellar, but when you have a true number 1 edge rusher like Montez Sweat wanting to show out against the team that traded him away and didn't want to give him that big time contract, he's going to have a big day, and I think the Bears just take this one.
Yeah, I think this is sort of this is turnaround time for Bears. Eberflus is going to look at this and, coming out of week 6 in the UK, sitting at 500, got your bye week. I think they're going to fly them home right away and go, okay, you know what? Go rest, recharge. We're going to come back. We're going to treat this bye week. The season starts
today,
next week against Washington. We're 500 right now. We have to get things going now. We have to find it now. And I think they do. They go into Washington and we see, I don't want to say a totally different Bears team. We're going to see
a much more
what the
confident
Bears have
team.
shown those flashes of, but it's going to be much more consistent. We're going to see that consistency and that calm. Eberflus is going to get this team rolling finally out of the bye week, and this is where I think they start to pull themselves away from the middle of the pack teams, and with a big win against Washington.
Yeah. The following week, in week number 9, they head over to Arizona to take on the Cardinals. Now, the Cardinals had themselves a very good offseason, similar to the Chicago Bears. The Cardinals, however, had a lot more holes to fill. I think the Cardinals are going to be trying their best. Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to be very good, but he is going to walk up and say, "Hi, my name's Marvin Harrison. Who are you?" And it's going to be, "Hi, I'm Jalen Johnson." Prepare to have a very bad day. And I think Marvin Harrison, he's going to walk out there and go, "Okay, I'm going up against this secondary." Okay. And Kyler Murray, I think the Bears are just going to play very confident. And I think you were saying they're going to be starting to hit more of those flashes. I think they're just going to be playing more confident. They're going to go, you know what? Caleb, he's going to start to figure out the NFL at this point. He's been in the league now for 8 games. He's had half a season. It's going to start to feel more comfortable. I think he's going to come in fairly comfortable anyways, but this is going to be a situation where it's going to be, okay, I'm going up against the best secondary in the NFL every single week. I've seen what NFL secondaries have done. I'm not worried about Arizona, and I think they absolutely walk over the Cardinals.
Yeah, and it's not just confidence, but it's consistency is what we start to see from them at this point in time as well. And yeah, the Cardinals have next to nothing for defense. And so that's going to make it real easy for Caleb Williams, DJ Moore, Keenan Allen to tear up that defense. And yeah, they walk away with another win and start stretching themselves away from that 500 record.
Yep. The week following, in week number 10, they are back at home for the first time since week 5. And they take on the New England Patriots. I don't think this is a very long discussion. The Patriots are one of the worst teams in terms of construction-wise. They have no one to throw the ball to, whether that's Jacoby Brissett, whether that's Drake May, whether that's Joe Milton throwing the ball. You can go, who's their top guy? It's a rookie. Okay. Has he met Jalen Johnson? Has he met Tyreek Stevenson? No. The Bears are going to be walking away with a I think, a pretty confident victory here today.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. The Patriots are, we've talked about how bad the Panthers are and how bad the Giants are. The Patriots are the other team that's in that mix.
Yeah.
And this is perfect for the Bears because, as I said at the start of our talk about the Bears, I had them sort of bouncing back and forth for a bit, and then they hit themselves a stride and win a bunch of games in a row, and this continues that trend as they win their third game in a row against the New England Patriots.
We talked about the Steelers going into the hell portion of their schedule.
Yep.
This is kind of where the Bears enter their hell portion of the schedule. It's because we haven't had a division game, and it's division game, division game, division game. Like you have three back to back to back, or you have three in a row. It's going to be tough. And unfortunately for the Bears to start the division games off, you're at home against the Green Bay Packers. Now, as we talked about with the Steelers and Ravens being a classic rivalry, this is another one. Jordan Love, they found another one. They found another great quarterback. They found another franchise quarterback. I think Caleb Williams is going to look at this game and he's going to understand the history at this point and go, they're not walking into Soldier Field and beating me. I'm not going to have Jordan Love score a touchdown, walk up to our fans and say, I still own you. This is my house. This is my team. You are not coming here and winning. This trend of it just being the Packers bullying the Bears like the Bears are the younger brother is over. Hi, my name's Caleb Williams. This is my house. You are not winning here. The Bears win this game.
Yeah, I agree with what you said about Caleb. I would like to add that I think Matt Eberflus puts a big emphasis on this game in terms of making sure that there is not too much emphasis on the game. I think he's going to take the squad and he's going to go, look, we've won 3 in a row. We're going to do the exact same thing we've done the last 3 weeks. We're not going to go into this game going, oh, this is the Packers. We have to do something special now. No. They need to go in and play their game still, and I think they will do that. And I agree. I think the Bears will beat the Packers in Week 11.
Having another division game, this time it's kind of the baby brother of the division now. And that's the Minnesota Vikings. At this point, is it going to be J.J. McCarthy in there? Is it still going to be Sam Darnold? We don't really know. The thing with the Vikings is they have a really good offense. Their defense is a lot more questionable. I unfortunately think for the Vikings, this is just kind of one of those years. They're just going to kind of have to ride it through. They're probably going to win 7-8 games this year. This is not one of those 7 or 8 win games this year. I think the Bears, they are at home and they're going to look at this team and basically just say, listen, it's just not your time. It's ours.
Yeah. I think that it doesn't matter who's at quarterback for that Vikings team. They're not going to be good enough this year, unfortunately. And yeah, I do think that this will be the game where, the Bears are able to pull out another big win against another division rival after an emotional game against Green Bay and run their win streak to 5 in a row.
Thursday against the Detroit Lions on Thanksgiving. Now, this is the first time that the Bears will play the Lions this particular year. Last season, they kind of had the Lions number. And we know what the Lions are like playing on Thanksgiving. Even Family Guy, at one point they had a joke of, hey, it's Thanksgiving. Aren't you supposed to be losing a game in Detroit? With that being said, the Lions, they're going to be a really, really tough team to beat this year. I think the Bears are unfortunately just still a little bit, they're close. It's going to be a close game. The Bears defense is going to continue to have struggles for Ben Johnson. Matt Eberflus has Ben Johnson's number. I unfortunately think the Lions, their defense has gotten a lot better, and I think the Lions take this one.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. This is where they stumble. This is where the Bears have a bit of a stumble, on Thanksgiving, early. It's the early game too.
Yep.
And so Thursday morning, it's a weird time to play, and I just don't think they'll be able to put it all together. And I think there's going to be a little bit of Caleb Williams looking ahead to the next week at his return to California. And I think it's going to bite them, and they're just not going to be able to get it done, and the Lions will pull off a win on Thanksgiving. The unicorn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pains me, but the Lions are the team in this division right now. They were that close to a Super Bowl. Realistically, they probably should have made it to the Super Bowl. But
if not for their coach, they probably would have.
Yeah, exactly. And the team that allowed them to not go to the Super Bowl is the team that the Bears have to go up against next. Caleb Williams makes his return to California, not quite LA, but San Francisco, and they take on the 49ers. Even without Brandon Ayuk on this team, whether he is there or isn't there, the 49ers are still the team in the NFC that you have to beat.
Yeah.
I think the Bears are going to keep this very, very close. I think Caleb Williams, he's still going to be trying to do everything that he can. I think this is going to be a Caleb Williams stat line, very, very good. But unfortunately, the 49ers pull out the win.
Yeah, I think the score might be close, but I think watching it, we'll really see that it's a tale of two teams at two different levels still.
Yep.
And I think the 49ers are going to win this game. And even if the score is close, people will look at it and go, well, yeah, but easy win for the 49ers. Like, not as easy as when the Bears beat up on the Panthers, but I just don't think the Bears will have everything quite there to be standing toe-to-toe with the top team in the NFC quite yet. It's going to be a good preview of what could be to come for the next few years as we head towards NFC Championship games. But at this point, it'll be like watching the big brother spank the baby brother.
Yeah, this game.
I know it hurts to hear.
No, I think it's hilarious to hear, and I agree with you. This game
Right?
kind of has the feeling to me of Mike Ditka in his first year coaching the Bears. They made it to the playoffs, and the 49ers beat them. And then, it was the first year that he was the coach, the 49ers beat them. And the next year, they went into the playoffs, 49ers beat them in the playoffs. And then, it's just kind of one of those things of just like, okay, we're here, and they're just right there right now. And just a few more seasons, and we're not just going to be even with them, we're going to be ahead of them, and we're going to show them those victories. But yeah, I don't think the Bears will be able to sneak away a victory in that game. It would be, if they did, the Bears are going to be looked at as a very different team moving forward if they were able to beat the 49ers. That'll
put them into that dark horse category for making a strong playoff push if they can beat the 49ers. I'll say that if the 49ers are into that lull like they had last year where they had a bunch of injuries and they went on that losing streak for like 3 games, then that would be sort of an asterisk where it's like, okay, they beat them, but George Kittle wasn't playing, Christian McCaffrey wasn't playing, Brock Purdy wasn't playing.
That's kind of why I have that thing. If they beat them but they're injured, it's kind of like, yeah, you got to win, but did you really beat them? But if they beat them full strength, it's like, okay, we can talk about this team not just being a playoff team, but a high level playoff team.
Yeah.
Following that game, they go into Minnesota on Monday Night Football to take on the Vikings. As I said, for their Week 12 matchup, I don't think the Vikings have that good of a defense. They have a very good offense, but the Bears have a better defense than the Vikings have offense. And I think the Bears and Caleb Williams, he's not going to be happy with this 2-game losing streak, and the offense is going to look at this and go, we need to beat a division opponent again. And I think they go out there and they beat the Vikings in Minnesota.
Yep. Yeah, there was probably a brief moment for Minnesota going, oh, we got a primetime game and we don't have to worry about Kirk Cousins. And then they looked around in their quarterback room and went, wait, we don't have anybody.
Yeah.
Fuck.
We have
And
a
yeah,
young rookie that we might not trust exactly fully yet, or you have Sam Darnold.
yep. And for Caleb Williams, he's going to be looking at this with what I've projected thus far, and he's going to be like, I lost Thanksgiving. I lost the only other primetime game I've had this year. I gotta pull out a primetime win here. I gotta turn this around. And perfect team to do it. The basement Vikings for this division, and I think the Bears sweep the Vikings this season in that division.
Next, they are at home against the Detroit Lions, and similar situation to what I talked about against the Lions in that Thanksgiving game. It's going to be a close game. Matt Eberflus is going to have Ben Johnson's number. It's going to be a lot of back and forth, but I think the Lions are just going to have that little bit more, and they're just going to be able to walk away with this victory because they are just that slightly bit better in this moment, and they're going to be looking to say, you know what, we're competing with the 49ers for that first spot again this year, and we really want to take it. And they're like, this is kind of the Lions' year to say, you know what, we're going to try to take it to the 49ers and make a Super Bowl push. And so I have the Lions winning.
I have to agree. And I think they're going to be riding high after a Monday night win, sweeping the Vikings. They're going to go in, get back home up against Detroit, go, okay, we can split this series. And it's just, they're going to come up a little bit short. And Detroit's going to be like, no, this is our division for now. We're making our push. You sit down, you can come and do this in 2 years. And so after sweeping the Vikings, unfortunately, I think they turn around the next week and find themselves getting swept by the Lions.
Yeah, short week, so they're gonna have to have a short memory because the Seattle Seahawks come to town for the final home game of the Chicago Bears season, and I think the Bears look at the Seattle Seahawks team and go, "We're fighting for a playoff spot here.
Mm-hmm.
You guys are definitely not as good as us." Shane Waldron, thanks for giving him to us. Shane Waldron, I think, is going to look at Caleb and say, "Help me beat my old team." And I think the Bears come out swinging on Boxing Day. And I think they beat up on this Seattle Seahawks team who, again, we all know my distrust of defensive head coaches. And the Seattle Seahawks, I don't trust their offense. Geno Smith, he's old, and, are they going to be able to actually get a lot of things going at this point? I think the Bears, they're just going to be too much for the Seahawks at this point.
Yeah, and especially after just getting swept by the Lions, they're going to look at this and go, we need this win here. And so I do agree. I think they beat Seattle on Thursday, Boxing Day. And before we get to Week 18, I just want to say, I think with the exception of the Jacksonville game, we have picked every single game the same for your Bears.
We have indeed.
I think Jacksonville was the only one that we disagreed on.
Yeah, that it was the
and
only
so
game.
Here we go into Week 18. Is that still going to be the only one that we disagree on? Or what happens in Green Bay on Week 18? Both of these teams probably fighting for a wild card berth.
Yeah. The Bears, to me, at this point, Caleb Williams is going to be riding very confident. But like you said, both teams are going to be fighting for that playoff. And as much as it pains me, I do think the Packers are just that slightly bit better than the Chicago Bears here at the moment. And it's going to be a very, very, very close game. I think it's going to be one of those things where it ends in a 1-point difference. If I could have it, end in a 0.01 difference, I would say like that is going to be the type of game that I think it's going to be. Green Bay is going to go, "Oh, you didn't allow us to get a win at home, or at your guys' home this year. We're definitely not allowing you to get a win at home for us this year." It's just going to kind of reignite this rivalry and just go like this is going to be the first time that we've actually seen these two teams both be really good, have their quarterbacks, and it's going to be, listen, there's going to be a lot, it's going to start to have that feeling of the Steelers Ravens of just constantly splitting. And I think unfortunately for the Bears, they just don't get it done in Lambeau this year.
Yeah, the only thing I disagree with is that the Packers are better. I think by the end of this season, these two teams are on par. And the only reason I'm giving the Green Bay Packers a win here as well is because it's January in Lambeau. It's going to be cold, snowy, slippery, disgusting weather. And if these two teams are where I think they are, this is also going to be the final game of the regular season. I think this game is the one that will get flexed to Monday Night Football or Sunday Night Football. They usually don't do a Monday night game in Week 18. So if there's no Monday Nighter, then this will be the Sunday Night Football game in Week 18. This will be the last game to decide the final playoff team. And who knows? This might be one of those situations where it's a matter of whichever team wins gets the 5 seed and the loser gets the 7 seed. You
Yeah.
both still may be in that playoff position, but I do have the Bears losing in Lambeau in Week 18.
So for myself, I have the Chicago Bears with a record of 11-6, and you have the Bears at 10-7. So it's
Yep.
funny. I predict the Steelers to go 10-7. You have the Steelers 11-6. I have my Bears at 11-6, and you have my Bears at 10-7. So
Yep.
not a lot of difference.
No, it's pretty similar to what we did last year, except we've both given our teams a couple of extra wins, I think. Because I think last year I had the Steelers at 10 wins and got that pretty spot on. And I had your Bears last year at 9 wins, and I was way off. Or I had them at 8 and 9, I think.
Yeah, I had the Bears at 7 wins last year. And granted,
Yeah.
they didn't get the 7 wins like I thought they would. But yeah, it's going to be a painful loss at the end of the year because I would really love the Bears to sweep the Packers this year.
Yep.
It's just, I think they're just going to be just a little too much for that final game of the season. And I hope that, one of our records comes true for my Bears this year because I wouldn't be disappointed if they only got 9 wins this year because it would show still improvement of going from 7 wins to 9 wins. But it would be kind of one of those things of going, who did you drop the ball to? Who did you drop that little bit of extra game to?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think we can agree that for either of our teams, if they end up at 10 or 11 wins, we're both going to be happy because that's likely
extremely.
a playoff berth.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And as I said with mine, sticking my Steelers at 11-6, I think I'm being a little bit hefty on that because I could not decide where to put those losses early in the season. And that was where I really struggled. That Cowboys game I waffled on, the Raiders game I waffled on, and that Jets game as well. So I mean, that is a 3-game swing that I could be looking at for my Steelers, which puts them at 8 and 9 instead of 11-6. So that's pretty big change that could happen.
Yeah, and for myself looking at that, they could lose to Jags in London, and yeah, it could be a possibility for sure. And it's weird for me to talk about the Bears in a non terrible looking light. Again, there's been years where I've looked at the Bears and gone like, oh, like we're definitely a 10+ win team this year, and I felt really confident about it. And I've since from those years just been crushed down into powder from what the team does, where it's like, oh, I think they're gonna win like 10 games this year, and then they win 5, and it's like, oh. And so for me to say 11 wins, it's really difficult for me to say that because I've been burned by that so many times.
Yeah, see, and I'm sort of the opposite side of that. The
expectation is double-digit wins or it's a bad year.
Right? That's the expectation in Pittsburgh is double digits playoffs every year.
Yep.
And so usually the years that we go 9-8 or 8-8 before we went to this extra game each season, those were really the losing seasons for Pittsburgh in the last 20 years.
Yeah.
And so it's one of these years it's not going to work out for me.
Yeah.
One of these years, I'm going to be doing this 9, 10, 11 win prediction, and we're only going to get 5 or 6.
Yeah.
It's got to happen eventually. You know, we can't do this for another 30 years in Pittsburgh. It's not going to happen. At some point, we have to come crashing down. I hope it waits for a season with a good quarterback class so that we can get a top 10 pick when there's a quarterback there that we can trade up to get.
Yeah. Or you just hope that, you know, it's just a season of where, you know, the defense plays injured and it's kind of like, okay, well, we have a top quarterback class here at the moment, and you know, it's kind of just that write-off year, and so we're going to get this young rookie in with a good team.
Yep.
But that is our prediction episode here today, guys. Thank you all very much for watching. For Sterling, I'm Brendan, and this is the OneIQ Football Talk podcast, saying peace.